Were you disappointed that you did not hear anything from the governor on eminent domain and property rights?
No, I wasn't disappointed at all. I think she knows there's conversations going on between both chambers. We're working that out. I didn't expect to be part of her speech, honestly.
What are your thoughts on her property tax proposal? Same aim, but pretty different in how she plans to do it.
Yeah, you know, I've said in pretty much all the interviews I've done, we'll wait till we see the product on paper. I think it's all part of a conversation. The House will have their own product as well. We dropped our bill yesterday. I think when we sit down, take a look at all three of them, have a conversation, see where we arrive at consensus, that's the next step in the process.
What are your thoughts on the first proposal she made tonight on expanding benefits for veterans?
I think it's a great proposal. Look forward to seeing the language and having a conversation on it.
Her tax proposal is a 2% revenue limit. Yours, I think, has an inflation adjustment that hers doesn't have. How do you think you find common ground on that?
Well, I think it's just a matter of, looking at the proposals, making sure, again, to her point, she meant tonight about not squeezing a balloon, right? I mean, so having an ability to not limit or put a hard cap on that growth, I see value in that, right? From a small community coming from a mayor's perspective, I see value in allowing us to be able to be reactive to, to outside economic pressures, inflation, those sort of things that come up at times where we can't react to that budgetarily, but gives us the opportunity to have a little bit of wiggle room in the growth.
The governor talked about freezing property taxes for seniors with a home value of $350,000 or less. If I understood your bill, that there was no cap on the value of the home, and there would also be not a freeze, but just no property tax, period.
That's correct.
For people who fully own. How do you feel about her proposal and the fiscal impact of your proposal?
Well, I think it's good to see that we're aligned in the same direction, right? I think, there's subtle nuances now. We're having conversations about how we achieve, whether it's 65, whether it's a valuation cap, whether it's 60, which is the Senate's proposal with no value cap. I think those conversations will play out over time as we can take a look at the nuts and bolts of the proposal and measure that against where we were at.
Within her section on education, she talked about extending extracurricular opportunities to students in public charter schools. I think there was a movement, a bill last year in the Senate. I think it was in the Senate trying to do something similar for private schools. That may have been the House, but I'm curious about whether or not that's something you support.
Yeah, again, looking forward to seeing the language, looking forward to having a conversation. I mean, at this point in time, we're so early in session, to have a hard definitive position on some of these issues until we actually get to see what the governor's language looks like in the bill. I'm so sorry. And then see what our language looks like, right? I mean, I think that's where we have those conversations and build that consensus. So.
On the issue of cancer, both you and leadership in the House talked about the $1 million in the study that is expected to be seen here in the next few weeks, and kind of talked about waiting to see what that brings up in order to move forward. The governor has quite a long list of things that she wants to do on cancer. What do you make of those thoughts from the governor?
Well, I think it's important for her to address the cancer situation, and last year in the Senate, we moved a bill that would have addressed adding additional taxes to vape products and nicotine pouches. That would have generated roughly about $3 million for cancer research. I think there's a great conversation to be had there. How can we provide additional funding for cancer research? How can we partner with one of the premier hospitals that we have in the country, or the University of Iowa Healthcare Systems, and have another conversation on, is that enough? Are we heading in the right direction? Look at the report, see what the report tells us. Hopefully that gives us an indicator in which direction we should head.
Governor specifically mentioned radon and the links to lung cancer. There is a bill that I believe is still alive. It passed the House, but would be waiting in the Senate, that would require new home constructions to have radon mitigation systems. Are you interested in that, given the governor's focus on radon?
Yeah, definitely interested in that conversation, because he's right. I mean, radon is probably the leading cause of lung cancer in the state of Iowa. Up in my district with a lot of limestone, we have, I think, an increased presence of radon in northeast Iowa, but I think it's entirely across the state of Iowa. So trying to find all the ways we can help to mitigate the cancers that we have in the state of Iowa, providing research to make sure we're giving the best treatments. I mean, catching it early, which you mentioned tonight, which is extremely important. All those things come together to build a great package for how Iowans can have an answer to the cancer rate we have.
As you're talking about property tax negotiations, how important is that total overhaul, the changes to rollback that were mentioned in your proposal, that you're looking at as you go into negotiations between the different parties?
Well, I've been pretty clear, in my messaging that, we have a 40-year-old system. We've slapped a lot of Band-Aids on it. Again, I want to see both the House proposal and the governor's proposal, have a conversation, go through the details, because the devil's always in the details, and then take a look at it, right? And see, I still see a lot of value taking the system and stripping it down to its chassis, and then rebuilding it from there. I think, but again, waiting until we see a proposal from the governor's office and from the House and having a conversation.
Speaker Grassley talked yesterday about a tough on crime package, including 3 strikes you're out. We didn't hear that from the governor. How do you feel about the House Republicans' ideas on that?
I look forward to seeing his language. We saw some bills drop in the Senate yesterday that had to deal with, enhanced penalties in certain areas, fleeing the state. Other stuff was introduced in our chamber yesterday. So I think, everybody wants to, improve public safety. Everybody wants to make, public safety a priority because that's one of the key essential ingredients to having a great state to live in. I look forward to seeing Speaker Grassley's proposal, having a conversation, see how it aligns where the Senate's already heading in that direction, and if there's overlap, and we have conversations.
And are you open to spending more on the Department of Corrections to help address longer incarcerations?
I think Speaker Grassley addressed that yesterday, right? And again, I'm going to wait and see what we see out of the House and what their proposal looks like before we have conversations about increasing budget items.
Not to harp on the property tax beat again, but there's been a lot of talk about how you're going to find consensus and that being through conversations. But that's pretty broad in terms of, you've got some very different proposals. When you're having those conversations, how do you actually find consensus? Like, could you walk us through what those conversations?
Well, I think first of all, I have to see the proposals, right? We have to see the House's version, we have to see the governor's version, which we haven't seen, I think at that time, we take a look at those proposals and we see where we overlap. I think the Senate's proposal is going to be far more aggressive as far as tearing it down to the chassis. But I think the governor and the House will both bring, items for discussion to the table that maybe the Senate hasn't thought about in their proposal. And so we put it on the table and we take a look at it. We see where we overlay and where we align. I think that's where the conversation starts. Then we identify the differences, we work through those differences, and then we identify value in those points. And where something rises to the level of a consensus amongst the governor and the House and the Senate, then we move that stuff forward.
So is your thought process that we may end up with a 4th proposal that kind of merges things, or that there'll be give and take and you choose one of the 3?
I think it's early in the process to say, but that's entirely a possibility. Sure, there could be a combined proposal, looking at all 3 versions. Again, I think the Senate's proposal we unveiled yesterday is probably, a very robust proposal and taking it head on. And so again, without seeing the governor or the House's proposal, it's kind of early for me to speculate on that.
Sorry, another thing. It wasn't in her, I don't believe, so correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe it was in her speech tonight, but the governor is once again proposing her over-the-counter birth control pitch. That's been something that she's been really wanting to get done since becoming governor. Any thoughts on the possibility of that being the year that gets across the finish line?
I haven't seen the proposal, and it's early in session. I know I say this a lot, but really, I'm a policy guy, right? I need to see policy, I need to understand that policy, be able to read through it. And until I see the policy proposal, it's tough for me to speculate on what's in the bill, the impacts the bill has. I can tell you where we were at in the Iowa Senate. We reached consensus on the heartbeat bill and the exemptions we put into that. If something rises to that level of consensus again in the Senate, then we'll look forward to moving that.
Governor also told us, but tonight that her SSA proposal will be a 2% increase. Is that anywhere near where Senate Republicans?
Senate Republicans have not had a conversation on where we're going to land yet.
Do you think that you'll get the school funding done earlier this year than you did last session?
I hope to, yes.
Does it being Kim Reynolds' last session at all influence your priorities or the Senate Republicans' priorities?
No, I'm not sure if I understand the question.
I guess Reynolds being outgoing, being a lame duck,
Sure.
She might not be able to push through as much of her priorities. Does that impact what you want to prioritize and push through?
Well, I think Governor Reynolds has been an amazing leader for the state for the last 9 years. I think, to just look at policy and proposals and say this is your last session and just, not take it very seriously is not a very good way to govern. So I think that it's not going to have an impact on the Senate's perspective. Again, looking at those policies and proposals, getting in the weeds, understanding the complexity of them, seeing where we align with her proposals. And if the House has something similar, having those conversations again. But no, I don't think that's going to be an impact for us.
All right, thanks guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator.